My name is Richard Williams. I'm Land Operations Manager North for the John Muir Trust, and I'm going to speak this morning about the Quinag and Suilven path repair projects delivered through the CALLP scheme. This presentation it features two hills, Quinag, which is on the John Muir Trust's Quinag estate, and Suilven, which is part of the Glencanisp estate owned by the Assynt Foundation. The John Muir Trust were involved in both projects, and I'll come onto the detail about it a bit more shortly, but this map just shows the location of the two hills and pictures just by way of context. The issues were in many ways very similar for both projects. These are well-established paths that have become increasingly popular in recent years, but as a result of both that popularity and changing climate with milder, wetter winters, more periods of freezing and thawing, gradually there's more erosion and braiding, and consequently habitat damage and visual scarring as well. So this was one of the main challenges to try and address these problems, create a more naturalised path line and a more robust path that was going to stand up to both increased footfall and the more challenging climatic conditions as well. Finally, from an organisational organisational issue, capacity from fundraising to project management was a challenge, as was the case across many of the CALLP projects. So bringing partners to work together collectively was a great way to address some of those challenges and find some solutions. This slide shows some of the erosion and scarring, pretty typical. This is on the north side of the approach path to Suilven, and this was typical a lot of the approach from the end of the Stalker's Argo quad bike track through to the base of the hill itself. So this is a very typical part of the challenges that the path workers faced. So once it had been agreed that the projects were going to go ahead, discussion around the best approach to take started, and as mentioned, it was really a partnership approach from the start. So in the case of Suilven, the Assynt Foundation, John Muir Trust and the Scottish Wildlife Trust working closely together to consider how best to deliver the works, and that included the management of the works and also fundraising, of course. So John Muir Trust membership appeal raised a good portion of the monies, as did applications to EOCA and the Scottish Mountaineering Trust, and of course match funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund as well. The works were put out by competitive tender, and two contractors appointed on Suilven, one for the upper works and one for the lower section of works. And then these works were managed locally by Chris Goodman, who at the time was the Trust's footpath officer and resident in Ackmelvik. Was very handy to have close to site and accessible for site meetings and that sort of thing. So in advance of actually doing physical work to the paths, materials needed to be won. There were plenty of materials on the hill as a whole, but not enough in close proximity to where the work was needed to happen. So a lot of stone was bagged from the western end of Suilven, as you can see by this slide, through the winter. Stone was bagged and then airlifted to the work sites. So there was a ready supply for the teams to crack into. And here we've got one of the helicopter lifts taking stone high up onto the saddle on Suilven. So this was to enable pitching of the path, the steep summit path up on the north side up to the Biarrick. And in the foreground you can see the amazing dry stone dike that sort of saddles the hill, and is incredibly intact, as you can see through the opening here. It's really survived the ravages of the weather on this really exposed position incredibly well for probably best part of 150 years. Once all the materials were in place, the hard physical work could start, and this photo slide encapsulates it pretty well. Working in really exposed conditions through all weathers, really quite challenging physical work. But it wasn't all mud and rain. There were good days too. And this shot's looking down from just below the summit of Suilven to the Bialach, where the pitching up the north side came to an end. Gives you a bit of a hint of the amazing views from working on the summit. So stones were airlifted to the top and then winched safely down to where the works were happening. And you can see in sort of the kind of middle foreground the deep scar there that was the previous path up to the saddle, and then just beyond that where the new path line was being put in. Work on the approach path was slightly different kettle of fish. Obviously a flatter gradient for a start, and there it was more about raising the height of the path out of the peat and bog, putting in cross drains and surfacing material, and really trying to keep walkers out of the wet and limit the damage from walkers onto the surrounding habitats. So switching focus now, this is a shot on Quinag. This is Donald Mackenzie from ACT Heritage, one of the contractors engaged on both projects actually. And this is Donald working on a bit of pitching quite close to the main summit on Quinag. This was a badly braided stretch of about 70 meters, but from the far side of the hill was a really visible scar. So again, an airlift of materials was needed, but that's resulted in a really nice, neat bit of work. And already just 9 months on, you can already see the habitat improvements around us, and the work kind of blending in with the surrounding environment. So a great job that's made the approach much safer for walkers. And also really reduce that erosion and scarring, and you know, in a few years' time, it will look very different indeed, and you know, the work should stand the test of time well. As well as engaging professional, experienced contractors, there are opportunities for volunteers to get involved too, and as this slide shows, it was good fun too. So this is on the approach path to Suilven. Chris Goodman in the light blue t-shirt there, and a gang of volunteers learning some new skills, making a positive impact, and having a good time as well. So all in all, win-win. This is a nice before and after shot. Obviously the before on the left, the after on the right. Slightly different perspective, so it's not photo not taken from exactly the same spot, but you can see the impact. And actually, the nice thing is, even the after shot, it's quite a natural line. It's the, you know, the path isn't making a big impact on the landscape. It's using materials that fit in terms of color and texture. So and again, over time, the vegetation around the works is bedding in, and so actually, yeah, now 2 or 3 years on from this photo, it's looking really good. Similarly, on this slide here, another before and after shot. and showing kind of how a sort of light touch natural approach is you know, both preventing further erosion and just giving people, giving walkers a pleasant experience. And on completion of the works, there's been opportunity for celebrations, for engaging new audiences, this being some kids from a local Lochkinver primary school, just explaining the importance of doing these works, what's involved, and you know, using it as a way to get kids out and about in the outdoors more. This actual bit of path is part of the nature trail around the grounds of Glencanis Lodge, but as you can see, with lovely views across to Suilven. Similar, not dissimilar approach in terms of the path work. So it's all part of a portfolio of works that have been enabled by the CALLP project, which is fantastic. And here, this is sort of the official handover of the works from the John Muir Trust, stood on the left-hand side, handing over to the Assynt Foundation on the right-hand side. So this was really concluding the Trust's sort of project management role in the work, and now the Foundation are taking on the ongoing management and maintenance of the pathworks. And you can just about make out the photo there of one of the helicopter lifts of stone, and a little sort of plaque commemorating the works, which is now in Glencanis Lodge. So a nice reminder of what partnership working has achieved, and hopefully will stand the test of time. As always with projects of this sort of scale, there's always lessons to be learned, and that's part of the process and part of a rationale for today's presentation. So just three quick ones to pull out here. The importance of investing both in materials and quality of work, whether it's a path, a building, whatever, you're getting that long-term benefit and return, and it is more work up front and more cost, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. So doing the work properly has already, it's paying dividends, and we see this with good maintenance in place, we see this work holding well for a good long time into the future. Secondly, as I've mentioned through the presentation, the partnership approach was really key to this. It couldn't really have happened without any of the three partners involved in playing their role. So it's very pleasing to see it come to a successful fruition. And finally, again, I think it's probably the case with lots of projects of this nature, but at the outset, it's very hard to estimate the amount of sort of project management time and indeed volunteer time needed to make these things a success. And I suppose it's as time goes on and they are a success, people are more and more willing to get involved and excited to be involved, which is brilliant. But I think it's always worth noting that the time to manage these projects and just all the variables involved means that it's always likely to exceed initial estimates of time. Thanks very much for watching and listening this morning. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and hope you'll have the opportunity, if you haven't already, to get out on the new paths on Suilven and Quinag and enjoy the hills and appreciate the quality of the work and all the hard effort that's gone into to getting to this stage. And of course, there's more to go as well. It's not a completed job. It never really is. But hopefully you'll appreciate that the work done so far has been a massive stride forward, and hopefully more to come in the not too distant future. Thanks very much.